Daniel chapter 7, this same Roman power under the papacy is described in these words.
So the league means
The league means that we're making...
paganism?
No, yes it does, but it means that we're entering into a relationship that we're not to enter in with the pagans.
Got it, got it.
Okay, we're making we're joining with paganism, and we're not supposed to do it. All right? And so,
Daniel 7.
Daniel 7, it says this.
7, what?
Yeah, just a minute. Notice verse 7 of Daniel 7:7 says, "And after this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a fourth beast." This is the same beast, or the fourth kingdom, that's in Daniel 11, verse 23, that the Jews made this league with, that they're not supposed to make a league with, and they're told not to prior to Judges chapter 1, verse 2. But it says, "And after this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth, it devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with its feet, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. And it had 10 horns." And notice this diverseness is reflected in 11:23, but it uses a different word, and it says that it's... "And after the league made with him, he shall work deceitfully," diverse deceitfully. You see the connection? Mm-hmm. "For he shall come up and shall become strong with a small people." This is the... This is where making a league with paganism will lead. It will lead to finally the people of God making a league between themselves and the fourth kingdom of Daniel, which is Rome. Alright? That's why it's very important that this study also deals with the daily in the book of Daniel. I can't really go into the details there, but I want you to grasp this reality. That the story we're talking about today, the journey of the crossing the Jordan and the sounding of the seventh trumpet, has to do with the story of both God's journey with his people, and it has the story to do with paganism. Yeah. And it's one story. It's not two stories, but it's the same story. Mm-hmm. And God is, in the Great Advent movement, this is his last step in removing us from this pagan power that we have been in league with since the days of the judges. Did we not read that they were not to make a league? Mm-hmm. Right. Now we're going to read that they did make a league. Mm-hmm. Let's check it out. Mm-hmm. Notice what it says now. We're going to read on. We're going to go to verse 3.
Of what?
Of Judges chapter 2. Okay. "Wherefore..."
Wait a minute, Bumpkin. Okay, 2?
Yes.
2 what? What?
Chapter 2 and verse 3. Are you there?
Yep.
Everybody's there? Say amen.
Amen.
Okay. "Wherefore I also said, I will not drive them out from before you, but they shall be as thorns in your sides, and their gods shall be a snare unto you." Okay. Now, do you suppose when the Jews made the league with the Romans that they realized that there was a snare involved?
Nope.
No.
But God said there would be.
Yes, he did.
And he said it in the day of the judges.
That's right.
Now there's a lot of years between the judges and the league made with the Romans, but trust me, this snare that God is describing, it came to fruition in that league that the Jews made with the Romans.
When they tried to crucify Christ?
They did crucify Christ.
I mean, during that time, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that was...
You mean in the time of the judges?
Yeah.
Well...
No, when the time they crucified Christ, that's when they put the league with Romans?
No, it was not. No. The league made with the Romans was in 158 BC. 158 BC.
And that's on the 1843 chart, correct?
That's on the 1840... No, the 158 BC date is not on either one of those charts. No, but that's the date that William Miller places the league at. Okay. William Miller places the league with the Romans of Daniel 11 verse 23 in 158 BC. Later, the Sabbatarian Adventist pioneers, James White and Uriah Smith, would place it in the year 161 BC. But for me and my money, I'm going to go with Miller, and I'm going to stand on 158. Okay? Because I've not found anything in our history books that gives the reason that Smith and James White changed it to 161. All they do is mention that that the league was made in 161. Nowhere have I been able to find the reason for the change. But Miller gives a very good reason for why he believed it was 158, so I'm going to stand on that for myself. But I'm not going to go into that today.
Okay.
We've covered that in the past, but I can, maybe in the next couple of talks we'll cover some of the details of the difference between what Miller taught and what the Sabbatarian Adventists taught. But one of the issues is that this league that Darnella was asking wasn't when they crucified Christ. No, eventually it would lead to their participation in the death of Christ on the cross. But this thing is where, one of the things that is being taught here is that William Miller taught the fundamental principle that you do not become a kingdom in Bible prophecy until you come in contact with the people of God. And this is where the Israelites first come in contact with the Roman power, when they make this league to protect them from the Grecian power that had taken the Syrian power, the Seleucid kingdom that had one of Alexander's 4 generals that had taken over the Syrian part of the Alexander the Great's territory.
Okay.
They were the ones that the Jews were trying to get rid of because they were being enslaved by the Greeks, and they made a league with the Romans to protect them from this power of the Greeks. So, but now it says in verse 3, wherefore, so this becomes a thorn in their side. And verse 4 says, and it came to pass, when the angel of the Lord spake these words unto all the children of Israel, that the people lifted up their voice and wept. And they called the name of the place Bochim, and that is that means
Weepers.
that is weepers. And they sacrificed there unto the Lord. You know, this reminds me of a text of Rachel weeping for her children. If you understand.
Yes, yes.
All right. So
Okay.
when ancient Israel does what God asked them not to do, it's reflected in when Herod slaughters the little babies to try to take the life of Jesus when he's an infant.
Right.
But things we do have consequences.
Amen.
And even though these people here didn't recognize it, but God is in all these stories, these should be, our spiritual antennas should go up when we see that these people are called the weepers, and we know there's a text in the Bible that says that Rachel is weeping for her children. We should make those spiritual connections. And we should tie these histories together so that we can see that God is really telling us His involvement in the people that are unwilling to cooperate with heaven on His journey to get them home. And the consequences that come about are dreadful. The things that King Herod didn't have to happen. But what God's people did when they were not supposed to do it led to those consequences. And we need to think about this today, where we're at the end of the world. What have Seventh-day Adventists been asked to do at the end of the world? Obey God and keep all of His commandments.
Amen.
And this is exactly the same that the people in the time of the judges were asked to do. The things the people coming out of Egypt were asked to do. Were not the 10 Commandments given at Sinai for that very purpose?
Amen.
And after they'd crossed the Jordan, and the 7th trumpet sounded, and Ellen White looked into the Ark of the Testament in heaven and saw the halo of light around the 4th commandment, God is finally carrying out the purpose for which He had called the people so long ago out of Egypt. And this is what Seventh-day Adventists need to grasp. This story, if we understand it as we should, will give us an understanding of what God has been doing and what He's willing to do for us if we will believe the gospel story. Because Paul writes, he says, I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God. And we've read earlier in our studies that the Old Testament and the New Testament are in perfect harmony.
Amen.
That the prophets and the apostles are in perfect harmony, and there is no disharmony between the testimony of the Old Testament and the testimony of the New. They're both telling the same identical story. And they're telling the story about a God who's willing to save if we're willing to be saved. And he goes on, this book of Judges goes on to say, and they sacrificed there unto the Lord. And when Joshua had let the people go, the children of Israel went every man unto his own inheritance to possess the land. This is at the end of the dedication of the time where Joshua was ending his role as their leader and he was just before his death. In verse 8 it says, and Joshua the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died, being 110 years old. How many know Bill Campbell?
Amen.
How many of you heard Bill's story about the restorers of the mansion? How many have heard it? Okay, it's very, it'll tug on your heartstrings. But that's what this story is about. It's about when Joshua died, a new generation came along. And they were to carry the torch that Joshua put into their hands. And that's what Seventh-day Adventists have been raised up to do. We've been literally been raised up to pick up the torch that had went from the hand of Moses to the hand of Joshua and then to the hand of the children of Israel at his death. Now this generation has a responsibility in the book of Judges to carry it aloft, a light. Jesus says, a light under a bushel can't be seen, but we're to set our light on a hill that all may see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is some idea of how it is that the New Testament and the Old Testament have no disunity, but they are in complete harmony. But what they do in the time of the book of the Judges is they hide their light under a bushel. And they don't let it shine for all the world to see. We're going to see that just now. It says, and they buried him in the order of his inheritance in Timnath-Heres in the mount of Ephraim on the north side of the hill of Gaash. And also all that generation were gathered unto their fathers. All the generation of Joshua are now gone.
Mm-hmm.
That means that in Adventism, when all the generation of the pioneers were gone, who then was responsible for the light that God had given his people? That generation that had come after him, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're going to read about the generation that came after Joshua. And there arose another generation after them, which knew not the Lord, nor yet the works which he had done in Israel. Let me ask you a question. How many of us were alive back in this time period?
No.
No.
Do we know the works of the Lord? No, we don't. Not really, do we?
No.
We've only read about them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we've had counsel that if we would enter into that history, not only from an uninspired counsel by Elder Dempsey, we've studied it here just a few weeks ago, that we cannot understand Seventh-day Adventist doctrines unless we enter into that history and become familiar with the Great Advent movement of 1840-1844. And he's voicing what this pen of inspiration is telling us about that movement. The movement of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in the Millerite time period, Ellen White says, was she says it was a glorious manifestation of the power of God. And an understanding of those times and those events will allow us to meet God on a different level than we have known him before.
Mm-hmm.
But it says here that these people didn't know the Lord. And I would recommend to you today that we do not know him. But he's giving us an opportunity that we can. And one of the ways that we can know him is through this history.
Yes.
Notice what they do now. It says, nor yet the works which he had done for Israel. And the children of Israel, what did they do? They did evil in the sight of the Lord, and who did they serve? Balaam. Now, if you go to the book of Numbers, chapter 22.
What? Numbers what?
22. Verse 1. Notice that Balaam is spelled differently here. It's B-A-L-A-A-M.
Right.
But over here in Judges, it's spelled B-A-A-L-I-M. So now we want to know the difference between Balaam in the book of Numbers and Balaam in the book of Judges. Are they the same? Is there a difference? Or what is going on? And hopefully, this little subject here of the god Baal will give us a demonstration of how these two things are identical. But yet, one is represented in the person of Balaam, and the other one is represented in the god Baal, who had been in existence long before Balaam was ever born. Okay? But the Bible here is wanting us to match wits with what it's trying to tell us. And this is, now, I should start off by telling you that the word B-A-A-L-I-M in Judges